The first alarm came in the dead of night, when the sky was black and still. Satellites flickered with warnings, and radar screens lit up like Christmas trees in every military command center across the globe. Nobody could have prepared for what they were about to see. From the outer edges of the solar system, enormous shapes were moving, gliding silently toward Earth. They weren't meteors, nor comets. No one knew what they were. But the moment they breached the atmosphere, their purpose became terrifyingly clear. On the ground, people noticed the sky changing. A strange, almost metallic hue spread over the horizon, like the sun itself was melting into steel. Panic rose in cities as warnings were broadcast over every channel. Yet, in the military bunkers and underground facilities, soldiers and scientists tried to hold on to calm. Orders were shouted, fingers pressed against buttons, eyes scanning screens for a solution. But the weapons, the pride of humanity, the massive arsenals designed to protect Earth from every imaginable threat, failed. Missiles vanished into thin air. Railguns discharged into the void. Lasers burned themselves out without leaving a mark. Each attempt to strike the invaders ended in frustration and fear. Lieutenant Mara Chen watched the chaos unfold from a command room hundreds of meters underground. Her hands shook slightly as she gripped the console. Years of training could not prepare anyone for this. She saw the world above crumble not from fire, but from a quiet, calculated force moving through the sky. They're not reacting, she muttered, voice trembling. It's like we're invisible. Outside, the first cities began to burn. But strangely, not in the ways anyone expected. No explosions tore through the streets. Instead, entire blocks of buildings collapsed silently, as if some invisible hand were rearranging them. People fled in terror, their screams muffled by the wind and the strange humming that now filled the air. It was not a sound from this world, deep, resonant, and almost musical, but every note made hearts pound faster. Despite the horror, something unexpected happened. Small communities, cut off from the chaos, began to fight back, not with weapons, but with ingenuity. Engineers rigged makeshift shelters, farmers and city dwellers coordinated escapes, and strangers became allies. Humanity refused to fold. Even as the world's largest armies failed, ordinary people found ways to survive. Mara noticed the pattern. On screens showing live feeds from around the globe, she saw humans doing things no machine or soldier could do. They adapted. They hid. They found weak points in the enemy's approach. In one small town, a group of teenagers used an old factory's machinery to create smoke screens, hiding their families from the hovering shadows. In another, a group of scientists built rudimentary communication devices that could send signals faster than the alien jammers allowed. Everywhere, humans improvised, using creativity instead of firepower. And everywhere, the invaders responded, not with anger, but with observation. Mara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps humanity was not as powerless as the world's generals had feared. Yet, the tension never left her. Every hour, the sky darkened further. Every hour, the humming grew louder. And every hour, she wondered how long ordinary people could outsmart beings who seemed impossible to defeat. In the chaos, Mara received a message from an old friend, Dr. Elias Tan, a physicist who had always warned about threats from deep space. The message was brief, almost cryptic. You're not looking at weapons. You're looking at intelligence. They don't destroy. They assess. And they are learning. Fast. Mara stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Learning. Assessing? Could humans actually teach an alien intelligence how to respect life? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Around her, the command center buzzed with panic and frustration, but in that moment, Mara realized something profound. The war wasn't only about firepower. It was about understanding, adaptation, and the will to survive. Night turned into a strange twilight. Above the city, the shadows continued their slow, deliberate movements, observing the tiny humans who refused to give in. And below, in the underground command centers, ordinary people made impossible decisions. Children were protected at all costs. Families were moved through hidden tunnels. Knowledge was shared in whispers, and courage became a weapon more powerful than any missile. Mara sat back in her chair, watching monitors showing fires that refused to spread, buildings that stood when logic said they should fall, and small groups of humans turning despair into strategy. It was clear that humanity had failed to predict the enemy's technology. But they had not failed themselves. Somewhere in the quiet courage of ordinary people, a spark remained, one that might be enough to turn the tide. And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, painting the smoke and metal with pink and gold, Mara realized that survival was no longer about weapons. It was about humans, the choices they made, and the stubborn, unyielding refusal to surrender. Humanity's guns had failed, but humanity itself had not. Mara didn't sleep that night. Not that she could. The hum from above continued, low and almost hypnotic, filling the underground command center like some alien heartbeat. Every now and then, the monitors flickered, showing glimpses of the enormous shapes drifting silently over the cities. Nothing moved too quickly. Nothing struck directly. It was as if the invaders were waiting, watching, calculating. Meanwhile, humans began to take action in ways no one in power had expected. In a small coastal town, fishermen rigged their boats with simple nets and steel cables, creating traps that the invaders didn't seem to notice at first. They were too clever to use weapons. They were clever enough to improvise. Mara studied the live feeds with fascination. Ordinary people were doing extraordinary things, and each small victory, no matter how minor, became a spark of hope for the rest of humanity. In one city, a group of children discovered that the invaders reacted to sound in a strange way. By using loud music and alarms in a coordinated pattern, they could distract one of the hovering machines long enough to move people to safety. In another town, engineers found that the machines avoided certain materials, old-fashioned things like rubber, glass, and wood. They had no idea why, but they quickly began to build shelters using whatever resources they had. Mara realized humanity had a strange advantage. The invaders were intelligent, yes, but they were also predictable, at least in small ways. Humans could adapt instantly. Machines and weapons could not. She called her team together, a small group of scientists and strategists who had survived the first wave of destruction. "We can't fight them head-on," Mara said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to think like them. Observe, test, adapt. Every small group that survives, they are the key." Her team worked feverishly. Using old satellite feeds, abandoned drones, and improvised sensors, they began to track the movements of the invaders in real time. Slowly, patterns emerged. The machines weren't attacking cities for destruction, they were marking areas, scanning buildings, assessing materials, watching human reactions. They were learning. Every action, every choice humanity made, was being recorded and analyzed. The realization hit Mara like a thunderclap. This wasn't just a war. It was a test. The aliens were measuring humanity's intelligence, creativity, and resilience. And if humans failed this test, the consequences were unimaginable. Outside, the streets were chaos, but chaos with purpose. Humans moved quietly, communicating with signals, small lights, and hand gestures. Entire neighborhoods disappeared from the invaders' view, hidden in clever ways. One family covered their home with mirrors and reflective sheets, creating illusions that confused the hovering shadows. Another group lured a machine into an abandoned subway tunnel, trapping it temporarily without firing a single shot. Even in despair, humans found laughter. It was quiet, almost guilty at first, but it spread quickly. Humor became a shield. Courage became a tool. And hope, fragile, stubborn hope, was the weapon no machine could destroy. Mara watched a feed of a young boy carrying a cat through the ruins, leading a small group of survivors. He looked back, smiled, and signaled them forward. In that moment, Mara knew humanity's greatest strength was not guns, missiles, or bombs, it was the people themselves. Dr. Elias Tan's words echoed in her mind, "They are learning. Fast." But now Mara understood better. If the aliens were learning, humans could learn faster. Every failed weapon, every improvised tactic, every small victory was teaching humanity something new. Each challenge was a lesson. And unlike the machines, humans could innovate in unpredictable ways. But the pressure was immense. Every hour the invaders remained above, the risk of being discovered grew. Mara saw entire cities trapped in tense silence, afraid to breathe too loudly or move too fast. Families huddled in basements, watching the sky, listening to the strange hum. Mara's team worked around the clock, coordinating small networks of resistance, sharing discoveries, and protecting key groups of civilians. Then, just before dawn, something unexpected happened. One of the hovering shapes descended closer than ever, almost touching the top of a skyscraper. Screens lit up with live footage of people freezing in place, their eyes wide in fear. But the machine did not attack. Instead, it hovered for hours, scanning, analyzing. Mara realized something terrifying and hopeful at the same time. The aliens were not indifferent. They were curious. Curiosity meant intelligence. Intelligence meant that humanity's choices mattered. Every creative solution, every act of courage, every small trick humans pulled, it was all being studied. And for the first time, Mara felt a glimmer of strategy. Humanity didn't need to destroy the invaders. They needed to outthink them, to survive by being unpredictable, to prove that humans were more than their weapons. As the first light of morning touched the city, the hovering machine slowly pulled back, leaving the skyline intact. The people below exhaled as if they had been holding their breath for years. Mara allowed herself a rare smile. Humanity had survived another night. They had not surrendered. And somewhere in the alien intelligence above, they had made note of it. Mara turned to her team. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We survive tonight. Tomorrow, we adapt. And after that, we fight in ways they will never see coming." For the first time, she believed it. Humanity's guns might have failed. But humanity itself, the courage, the creativity, the stubborn refusal to give up, had not. Dawn came slowly, gray and heavy, over the ruins of the city. Mara and her team had stayed awake all night, watching, learning, and coordinating. The invaders were patient, almost clinical in their observation, but humans were proving just as clever. Each small action, each improvised trick, was a tiny victory, and now Mara was ready to take it further. The first real counterattack wasn't about weapons. It was about information. Using hacked satellites and abandoned drones, Mara's team identified patterns in the invaders' movements. They noticed that the machines slowed down when encountering reflective surfaces and erratic light patterns. They noticed that sound, when coordinated in a sequence, could confuse their sensors. And they noticed that the invaders hesitated before entering zones where humans had created complex structures, even if those structures were fragile. Mara called her team together. "We're going to fight without firing a single shot," she said, voice steady but low. "We'll use what they cannot predict. They are powerful, yes. But they are not humans. They cannot imagine every possibility." The first operation was simple but daring. In an abandoned warehouse near the city's center, a small group of volunteers set up a maze of mirrors and lights. They worked silently, connecting wires, arranging reflective sheets, and setting small automated lights on timers. When the invader hovered above, the maze created illusions that made the machine think the streets were full of people, moving in patterns too chaotic to follow. The invader hesitated, scanning back and forth, its hum rising and falling like a confused heartbeat. Mara watched the screens, heart pounding. "Now," she whispered. Coordinated alarms and sound bursts went off in sequence. The machine twisted and swiveled, reacting to stimuli it didn't understand. 4 hours, the small team manipulated light and sound, guiding the invader away from residential areas. It worked. People trapped in the city were able to move through the streets safely. Mara allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had outsmarted a being far stronger than any weapon could challenge. Word spread quickly. Even with communication lines damaged, humans adapted. Small groups across other cities started copying the techniques. Mirrors, lights, sounds, clever traps. The invaders didn't know what to do at first. They hesitated, analyzed, recalculated, but humans were always one step ahead. It wasn't a fight with guns, it was a fight with brains. In one part of the city, a teenager named Javi led a group of children through a series of tunnels and makeshift bridges. They created false footprints and decoys, confusing the hovering machines. At the same time, in a rural town, farmers and engineers created simple pulley systems to move people silently across dangerous zones. Mara watched in awe as ordinary people became inventors, strategists, and heroes overnight. But the invaders were not passive. They adapted too. After the first week, the machines started observing humans more carefully, pausing longer before approaching, testing traps with small probes, scanning for patterns in movement. Mara realized that every human trick bought them only time. Every success required constant innovation. Humans could survive, but only if they kept learning faster than the invaders. Then came the first truly terrifying moment. A machine descended directly into a city square, larger than any before. Its sensors glowed, scanning everything in sight. Mara's team could see the panic ripple across the feeds. People froze, unsure where to go. Mara's stomach twisted. If they didn't act quickly, countless lives would be lost. She thought fast. "Use everything we know," she commanded. "Lights, sounds, mirrors. Don't let it predict our moves." Volunteers scrambled, setting up a network of reflective surfaces, timed alarms, and improvised barriers. The machine advanced slowly, but the illusions worked. It hesitated, pivoted, and finally retreated, confused, unable to track the humans. The city had survived another deadly encounter, and once again, human ingenuity proved stronger than alien power. Mara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. Every night brought new challenges. Every day demanded faster thinking, more creative solutions. But in the midst of danger, she also felt pride. Humanity was learning, evolving, adapting in ways no one could have imagined. Ordinary people became heroes. Ordinary actions became strategies. Every small success was a statement. Humanity refused to surrender. Dr. Elias Tan appeared on a secure feed, his eyes bright with urgency. "Mara, this is bigger than anything we imagined. They aren't just testing our defenses, they're testing our minds. And every day we survive, we teach them something they cannot anticipate." Mara nodded. She understood now. Humanity's guns had failed. Humanity itself had not, but survival depended on constant creativity, courage, and unpredictability. The battle was no longer just about strength. It was about thinking, adapting, and outsmarting an intelligence that, at first, seemed unstoppable. As night fell again, Mara looked at the sky, where shadows hovered silently over the city. The machines were patient, but humans were relentless. And somewhere deep inside, Mara knew that one day, human ingenuity would turn the tide. Humanity might not have powerful weapons, but it had something stronger: imagination, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. The next few days passed in a tense rhythm. Humanity had survived the initial encounters, but the invaders were learning faster than anyone had expected. Mara and her team realized that small tricks and isolated strategies were no longer enough. They needed coordinated, city-wide operations. And so, a plan began to take shape, a plan that relied entirely on human ingenuity. Mara gathered leaders from several surviving groups. Scientists, engineers, farmers, teachers, and even teenagers with clever ideas, all came together in a hidden underground complex. "We have something they do not," Mara told them. "They have power. We have creativity. They have speed. We have unpredictability. And they have numbers. We have courage. We will use it all." The first operation involved the central city, a place now partially in ruins but still densely populated. Teams moved silently through streets, erecting reflective surfaces, positioning timed alarms, and building barriers from abandoned vehicles and debris. They used lights in patterns, creating illusions that suggested human presence in areas where no one actually existed. Humans moved quietly in the shadows, slipping past machines that paused, puzzled, unable to decipher what they were seeing. Mara's eyes never left the monitors. "Timing is everything," she said. "We have to coordinate across blocks, across neighborhoods. One mistake, and it could cost lives." Every team member had a role. Scouts observed, engineers rigged traps, and volunteers communicated silently with hand signals and improvised codes. Humanity was fighting with brains, courage, and careful coordination. No guns required. The first machine entered the city square, larger than any they had encountered before. Its sensors glowed red, scanning every corner. Mara felt a pang of fear, but forced herself to focus. The human network sprang into action. Mirrors reflected sunlight and artificial lights, confusing the sensors. Alarms went off in a carefully timed sequence. Shadows moved where there were no humans. The machine hesitated, twisted, and finally retreated into the streets, unsure of what was real and what was illusion. But the victory was not without cost. In one district, a group had miscalculated. A sudden movement caught the machine's attention. It hovered lower, emitting a hum that shook buildings and terrified those below. People screamed and scattered. Mara clenched her fists, heart racing. "Focus," she shouted. "Stick to the plan. Adapt." The volunteers quickly regrouped, creating a new diversion with flashing lights and noise. Slowly, the machine withdrew, leaving the streets intact but leaving a reminder. The invaders were patient, but deadly. Meanwhile, Mara received updates from other cities. The techniques were spreading. Humans everywhere were improvising, adapting, and outsmarting the invaders in small but significant ways. In one town, children rigged old bicycles with bells and reflective panels to create moving decoys. In another, farmers used irrigation systems to create fog, hiding families from hovering shadows. Every act, no matter how small, was proof that human creativity could overcome even the most advanced intelligence. But the invaders were changing too. They no longer approached with blind confidence. They tested areas carefully, probing, sending small drones to investigate traps before entering. Mara realized the stakes had risen. Each encounter was not just a test, it was a calculation. And humanity had to evolve faster than the enemy's learning curve. In the underground command center, Mara and her team worked tirelessly, designing new strategies and coordinating larger-scale operations. Every decision mattered. Every small error could be catastrophic. But the determination of the people above ground, fighting without fear, inspired them. Humanity had become something more than survivors. They were tacticians, inventors, and a network of resistance. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the machines hovered near a school where dozens of families had taken shelter. The human volunteers acted quickly, creating diversions with sound and light. But this time, the machine did not leave. Instead, it paused and studied the humans below. 4 hours, it remained, observing their movements, their resourcefulness, their courage. Mara realized something terrifying and astonishing. The invaders were not only learning, they were evaluating humanity as a whole. The realization struck her like a thunderbolt. This was no ordinary invasion. It was a test of survival, ingenuity, and spirit. Every human choice mattered. Every act of bravery, every improvisation, every creative solution was shaping the invaders' understanding. And for the first time, Mara saw a glimmer of hope. Humanity was not powerless. Their creativity, courage, and unpredictability could turn the tide. As night fell again, Mara looked at the city from her monitor. Fires burned in some areas, but humanity had survived another day. Children laughed quietly in hidden shelters. Families moved silently through tunnels. Volunteers whispered instructions to one another, guiding people through danger. And above all, the machines hovered silently, learning, assessing, and unable to fully comprehend the humans they observed. Mara exhaled slowly. Humanity's guns had failed. Humanity's weapons had failed. But humanity itself, its courage, its intelligence, its stubborn refusal to give up, had not. And as the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, she knew that the battle for survival was far from over. But humanity had something the invaders could not predict: the heart and mind of a species that refused to surrender. Mara knew the next phase had to be decisive. Humanity had survived, adapted, and learned. Now it was time to strike, not with weapons that failed, but with strategy, creativity, and courage. The invaders were intelligent, patient, and calculating, but humans had something no machine could predict: imagination. The plan began in the ruined outskirts of the city, where volunteers had secretly gathered materials from abandoned factories, stores, and homes. Using mirrors, lights, pulleys, and sound systems, they built traps and illusions on a scale never attempted before. Every street, every alley, every building was part of a coordinated network designed to confuse, delay, and manipulate the invaders' movements. Mara's team mapped the city from underground monitors. They tracked the hovering machines, noting patterns in their behavior. Each observation became data for a new tactic. "We're not just defending," Mara said, pointing at the screens. "We're shaping the battlefield. Every move they make, they'll make it where we want. Every misstep they take will cost them time." The first real strike came silently. Volunteers lured a machine into a narrow alley lined with reflective sheets. As it entered, lights and mirrors bounced across its sensors, creating the illusion of dozens of humans moving unpredictably. The machine paused, scanning, and then, confused, it backed out, right into a controlled trap of pulleys and ropes that immobilized its legs temporarily. Cheers erupted quietly among the volunteers. Humanity had outsmarted a being far stronger than any weapon could challenge. Word spread quickly. Across the city, similar operations began. Children used decoys to lure machines into foggy areas. Farmers rigged irrigation systems to create clouds of water, reflecting light in chaotic patterns. Engineers activated old factory machinery remotely, generating noises and vibrations that tricked the invaders into retreating. Each success, no matter how small, gave humanity confidence. But the invaders adapted faster than anyone expected. They began analyzing patterns, learning from the illusions, and approaching cautiously. Mara realized the stakes were higher than ever. One wrong move could lead to destruction. Every strategy had to be unpredictable, constantly changing, and coordinated across multiple zones. Humanity had to be smarter than the invaders, faster than their calculations, and braver than their fearsome presence suggested. Amid this chaos, small human victories became symbols of hope. In one district, a group of children guided trapped families through a maze of tunnels while a decoy machine hovered harmlessly overhead. In another, a team of engineers used reflective materials to create illusions of crowds where no one stood. The machines paused, hesitated, and withdrew, unable to comprehend the human ingenuity that defied their calculations. Mara noticed something remarkable: the invaders were not attacking with the intent to kill immediately. They were assessing, learning, and testing limits. Every move humanity made, every trap or diversion, was a lesson for the invaders. Mara realized that this intelligence, which had once seemed terrifying, could now be exploited. Humanity didn't need to destroy them, it needed to outthink them, again and again. Then came the moment that changed everything. A machine, larger and more complex than any before, descended into the city square where volunteers had set their largest trap. The entire operation relied on perfect timing, coordination, and the unpredictability of human movement. Lights flashed, mirrors reflected, alarms rang in sequence, and shadows moved in confusing patterns. The machine tilted, paused, and hesitated. For the first time, it faltered, not out of fear, but confusion. Mara held her breath. "Now," she whispered. Every pulley, every rope, every distraction activated. The machine toppled into a carefully prepared pit, unable to move. The volunteers had done it. They had immobilized a machine without firing a single weapon. Humanity had struck back, using creativity, intelligence, and courage. The victory spread quickly. Humans everywhere began coordinating similar operations. Small towns became clever traps. Ruined cities became mazes of illusion. The invaders were powerful, but they were not invincible. They could be outsmarted, delayed, and manipulated. Humanity was learning, adapting, and thriving in ways no one had predicted. Mara looked at the monitors, watching families move safely through streets once controlled by fear. She felt pride, exhaustion, and determination all at once. Humanity's guns had failed. Humanity's weapons had failed. But humanity itself, its courage, intelligence, and stubborn refusal to give up, had not. And now, for the first time, they were no longer only surviving. They were fighting back. Above, the machines hovered silently, studying, calculating, learning. Below, humans moved with ingenuity, hope, and unbreakable spirit. And Mara knew one thing clearly: the battle for survival was far from over. But humanity had discovered something stronger than any weapon: the power of creativity, courage, and the will to endure. The city was no longer just a battlefield, it had become a living, breathing network of strategy. Humans moved silently, communicating through whispers, hand signals, and improvised devices. Every alley, rooftop, and abandoned building was part of a carefully coordinated plan. Mara watched from the underground command center, her eyes glued to monitors showing hundreds of small human operations happening simultaneously. The invaders had learned quickly. They no longer moved blindly, but they could not anticipate the full scope of human creativity. Mara realized the key was not to fight them directly but to manipulate their intelligence against them. Each trap, each illusion, each decoy was part of a larger game, one that humans had begun to understand better than the enemy ever could. The first decisive operation began at dawn. Volunteers lured a cluster of machines into an abandoned industrial zone. Using mirrors, sound, and pulleys, they created a maze of confusion. Machines spun, paused, and retreated repeatedly, unable to calculate the chaos humans had designed. Then, in a coordinated move, humans activated a network of automated traps. Large scaffolds tipped over, nets fell, and heavy machinery blocked escape routes. Machines became trapped, immobilized, and confused. For the first time, humans had forced the invaders into submission without a single shot being fired. Mara allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had discovered a critical truth: cleverness could overpower brute force. Small towns replicated the operation, creating illusions of entire crowds and moving decoys to distract machines from real survivors. Cities once paralyzed by fear now thrived on ingenuity, strategy, and courage. Humanity was learning faster than the invaders. But the victory came with a warning. The largest machine of all hovered over the central city, observing every move. It was intelligent, calculating, and patient. Mara knew this encounter would be different. One misstep, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Her team worked tirelessly, running simulations, planning every move, and coordinating signals across districts. Every human, from children to engineers, had a role. Every action mattered. As the machine descended, the city seemed to hold its breath. Lights flashed, mirrors reflected, alarms rang, and humans moved in precise, unpredictable patterns. The machine tilted and twisted, sensors glowing, as it tried to make sense of the chaos. But humans were always one step ahead. Every decoy, every distraction, every improvised device created confusion, forcing the machine to retreat repeatedly. Then, something unexpected happened. The machine paused and emitted a low hum, almost like thought. Mara realized it was not attacking, at least not yet. It was studying, analyzing, trying to understand why humans acted in ways it could not predict. And in that moment, Mara understood the key to victory. Humans did not need to destroy the invaders. They needed to outthink them, to prove that intelligence, creativity, and courage could not be measured by brute force alone. Across the city, humanity executed a second wave of operations. Teams moved trapped survivors through hidden tunnels, guided by decoys and illusions. Volunteers activated reflective surfaces and sound systems in precise sequences, luring machines into dead ends and immobilizing them without violence. The city became a chessboard, and humans had learned to play faster and smarter than the invaders. For the first time, Mara felt a spark of hope that went beyond mere survival. Humanity was not just defending, it was shaping the battlefield, controlling the movements of machines that had once seemed unstoppable. Each successful operation boosted morale. Children laughed quietly as they helped guide survivors. Families moved safely through streets once ruled by fear. Engineers watched as their creative solutions outsmarted the most advanced intelligence humanity had ever faced. Yet Mara knew the battle was far from over. The invaders were patient, relentless, and adaptable. Every human victory taught them something new. The key was constant innovation, unpredictable thinking, and courage. Humans had proven they could survive. Now they needed to prove they could win. As night fell, Mara looked at the sky, where shadows of machines hovered silently over the city. The low hum had changed, it was less menacing now, almost hesitant. Humanity had found its rhythm, outthinking, outmaneuvering, and surviving in ways no weapon could achieve. And somewhere deep inside, Mara knew the final confrontation was approaching, a moment where creativity, courage, and intelligence would be humanity's greatest weapons. Humanity's guns had failed. Humanity's weapons had failed. But humanity itself, its ingenuity, courage, and stubborn refusal to surrender, had not. And as dawn approached once more, Mara realized one undeniable truth. The war was not over, but for the first time, humanity had the upper hand. The final night had come. The city, battered and scarred, stood as a testament to human resilience. Fires smoldered in abandoned streets, but humanity had survived, adapted, and evolved. Mara sat in the underground command center, surrounded by her team, watching the sky filled with the hovering machines. This time, it was different. They were no longer random, scattered shadows. They were a coordinated force, massive and deliberate, moving as one intelligence. Mara exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. This was it, the moment that would decide not just the city, but the fate of humanity itself. Weapons had failed. Conventional strategies had failed. But humans had learned something the invaders could never fully grasp: unpredictability, courage, and imagination. The operation began just after midnight. Humans across the city moved in synchronized patterns. Volunteers, engineers, and children worked together with a precision born of desperation and creativity. Mirrors reflected light into the machine sensors, creating illusions of crowds that did not exist. Alarms rang in complex sequences. Decoys moved through alleys and rooftops, drawing attention away from real humans. Mara's eyes darted between monitors. "Timing," she whispered, "is everything. One false step, and we lose everything." Her team coordinated across districts, using improvised communication systems to guide every move. Every alley, every street, every building became a part of a massive, city-wide trap. Humans were no longer just surviving, they were orchestrating the battlefield itself. Then, the largest machine descended into the central square. Its sensors glowed brighter than ever, scanning, analyzing, calculating. Every human instinctively froze, waiting for the moment the machine might strike. Mara's heart pounded. The machine was the culmination of the invaders' intelligence, the ultimate test. And now, humanity was ready. With a subtle signal, the operation began. Lights flashed across reflective surfaces, creating dizzying illusions of hundreds of moving humans. Alarms rang in a carefully timed sequence. Shadows moved unpredictably. The machine twisted, tilted, and hovered hesitantly. For hours, it tried to make sense of the chaos humans had created. Mara held her breath, knowing that patience and precision would be humanity's weapon. Then, in a coordinated strike of human ingenuity, every trap was activated at once. Pulley systems tipped over, nets fell, heavy debris blocked exits, and improvised machines created vibrations that destabilized the invader. The largest machine faltered, struggling against the carefully orchestrated chaos. It had learned, calculated, adapted, but humans had outthought it. Across the city, other machines were similarly immobilized. Volunteers guided trapped survivors through tunnels and hidden paths. Decoys lured remaining machines into dead ends. Every small success multiplied, creating a chain reaction of confusion, hesitation, and retreat among the invaders. Humanity's strategy had worked. Mara watched the sky transform. The hovering machines, once symbols of fear and destruction, began to withdraw, as if recognizing a force they could not understand or overcome. Humanity had survived. Humanity had fought back, not with weapons, but with creativity, courage, and the will to endure. A hush fell over the city. For the first time in weeks, people emerged from hiding, blinking at the dawn that painted the horizon. Mara stepped outside, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief settle over her. Children laughed, families reunited, and strangers embraced. Humanity had faced a force far stronger than any weapon could challenge, and had triumphed through ingenuity, unity, and heart. Dr. Elias Tan approached Mara, his eyes shining with awe. "They were learning," he said quietly. "But humanity, you were unpredictable. You were alive in ways they could never fully calculate." Mara nodded, staring at the sky. The machines had retreated, but the lesson was clear. Humanity's guns had failed. Technology had failed. But humanity itself, the creativity, courage, and stubborn refusal to surrender, had not. That was the true weapon. That was the force no alien intelligence could ever defeat. And in that quiet, victorious moment, Mara realized something profound. The world had changed. Humanity had been tested and had passed. The invaders would return, perhaps, but humanity had discovered its greatest strength. Not firepower, not machines, but the indomitable spirit that refused to yield. As the sun rose, illuminating the scars of the city, Mara allowed herself a rare, hopeful smile. Humanity had survived the impossible. Humanity had won, not through destruction, but through imagination, courage, and heart. The world would remember this night, not for the fear it had faced, but for the strength it had shown. Humanity's guns had failed. Humanity's weapons had failed. But humanity itself, alive, creative, and unbreakable, had not. And in that truth, Mara knew, lay the hope for every tomorrow.